There's also everyone has the responsibility. Sorry, you're not gonna get a problem by having 8 children.
I also feel the same way about our teachers. So kids are better.
This country has its own crazy issues. Every country has issues. But it's not up to, you might see. So, stop having so many kids.
Great effort to buy back these structure close all great.
Kids, right? How many pairs of sneakers?
One that lasted forever, and then your sacks go, and then people wrote on them.
I had 3 pairs of sneakers. Right? Yes.
One dress there.
Yeah, I had 1 pair of sneakers, I had dress shoes, and then I had like
Every day school. So I had every day school, and then dress, and then the.
Yeah.
Or any ears that way.
But now, right, culturally, oh, I have 100 pairs of sneakers, right? I get the joy that brings something to it. But you need to realize that there's ramifications to having 100 pairs of sneakers that, you know, the artwork, I'm like, look, that photo, that 5%
Are they the ones that like
to take their land, so we have chickens. Look at the phenomenon. All those kids not wanting to come back. Shooting bows and arrows and cops. And they were carted away in trains to re-education camps. What did the world do? So we are all.
meeting with the mom?
Yeah. I think
You know, inside the car.
absolutely.
You have Texas? 26. Yeah,
Anyway,
Pleasure to talk.
I'm sure there's
I was handing,
You got it.
What have you got?
from Italy.
Italy.
I was having something delicious.
Perfect.
I look forward to it.
I'll see.
That's okay. I think. I wish to present the impact plan. Okay. A little. And something more is the energy.
Is that what you're worried about? Feedback or just that's the cycle you're trying to get? Yeah. Do you want to try it? I mean, we've got a couple minutes. Maybe we can. I can speak into the microphone for you. Hello, everyone who's here early. We're going to do site checks, so don't be alarmed.
Tú hablas español, ¿cierto?
Sí.
Mira, yo quiero presentar algo ahorita que lo tengo en una memoria. ¿Tú hablas español? No. ¿Me ayudas a traducir? I wish to present more later video that are here. Okay? It's full this USB is antique and we have to wait. this USB is
Yeah.
Let's prioritize the sound and then we'll get to that.
I just need an adapter for that, so it's going to be a couple minutes.
¿Me ayudas a traducir?
Oh, él necesita algo para conectarlo. So,
Un
cuando-
adaptador, un
Sí, y
adaptador.
ahora mismo están grabando en el de tu cuarto, así que.
Tranquilo. More later.
Yes.
The name is Impact. Dog Impact. Impact Plan.
You need a converter?
Un convertidor.
Ajá.
¿Sí?
You want?
I have
Yeah.
Thank you.
Open up.
Yeah, they're filming in the other room.
Yeah, the name is, let's see, Dog Impact. Okay? Perfect. Thank you. I let the.
Leave it there or get it back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Text. Melissa, are you here on the Zoom?
Thumbs up.
Very nice. That's true.
And can you hear me, Melissa? turn it up a bit more. I just don't want to get feedback, you know, kicking into each other. Okay, this actually should work. Thank you.
The people understand will be amazing.
So I have your card to send you a meeting house. Anything is best? Anything is okay?
Yeah, okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Come all this way. That's why I could see it.
Just moved to New York City, Columbia, and his goal is to work in the Amazon. Dedicated to science of that. So he's studying environmental something or other.
Yeah, it's a field of energy and chemistry. So I'm focused on the carbon cycle, but a little bit of like nitrogen cycling in the Amazon in particular. How we respond to climate change. I would love that, yeah.
You also have use for space and
Yes. More expressive.
yeah. It's sort of like neuro fiddling as the earth is burning.
I'm very nearsighted that I don't have glasses on because I'm vain. So please come up and don't make me call you out of the box. So our partner university has been very patiently waiting to come on board, and they're wonderful. It's the Center for Technology and Migration, which is a really interesting intersection. All right. Welcome back. This is the Leader of Regeneration, specifically investment, innovation, humanity, and policy for peace with nature. Why do we have such a long title? Well, it's important that each of these factors works together. Each of these industries is critical for humanity's future. And if you're a business, you might not think that what you do is all that important as far as saving humanity. But that's where you're wrong, because unless you are being part of the transformation and finding ways to create a business entity that is good for the humans, is good for the planet, you are a part of the problem. And that's okay, because we are all part of the problem, as our indigenous partners have said. No one is exempt, and we all need to be part of the solution. And we also need to recognize that the opportunity here is enormous. The business, as well as the ethical and moral opportunities. So when we combine these actors, we find something incredible. A transformation that begins from the bottom up and from the top down. And in the middle, I'm going to now ask Mark Buckley to share a few words. He is wonderful at looking at the whole ecosystems and bringing them together.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I am so honored to be here with you guys at the Harvard Club in New York City at a very pivotal moment in our world's history. The United Nations Climate Week is going on now, so it's a UN Summit of the Future, the UN General Assembly 79th session, as well as the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit, and then probably 350 plus side events and people screaming and yelling and talking about everything to do with climate, environment, and some people talk about things that have nothing to do with climate, environment, or well-being for the world. I am here representing many different views and voices, and first and foremost, the global society. For the first time in human history, the global society delegation has representation within, as a stakeholder within the United Nations General Assembly, as well as at the Summit of the Future and Compact, or the UN Global Compact. What does that mean? Well, we're not a world of humanity divided by nations, borders, countries, and cultures. We're a nation of human beings on one planet, all together. And sometimes our nations and countries make decisions that are counter to many of us in our livelihoods, and that's to stop. And so that's the most important reason I'm here first. And the second is because I do a lot of work on regeneration. I wrote the Sustainable Development Goal Manifesto for the United Nations. And I also, as a futurist, the iteration of the next set of goals after the Sustainable Development Goals. Did you even know that there's goals after the SDGs? Most people don't, but there was goals before and there will be goals after. These goals end December 31st, 2030, so when the SDGs end, and there will be a new set. And right now it's slated to be the regenerative side, the development goals. But I'm hoping we will leapfrog and have a moment where we decide and realize that we need regenerative development, that we need to regenerate our world, restore the community, human beings, our planet, and this world. And so I speak a lot about regeneration, and that's truly why I'm here, because a lot of people take it into their mouth in the wrong context of understanding. Regeneration means to create the conditions that are conducive for all life life conditions. And it's a world that works for 100% of humanity and all species on this planet without the ecological offense or disadvantage of anyone or anything. That's a pretty big conflict. If you take those universal principles of what I just said and you apply them into your business models, into your lives, and into the investments that you do, you will have a restoration and regeneration and abundance in business, organization, and life. There's this one last thing I want to leave you with. We talk a lot on this world about this work-life balance. I just want to tell you, it's bullshit. There is no such thing as work-life balance. There is only life. We are not in the business. We're in the business of life. There is only life. And if you are this capitalistic, extractive, horrible person at work or in this work life, and then this Zen utopian fighter at home in your personal life, you're probably schizophrenic, bipolar, you're on the verge of burnout because you're going in two different directions. And so what I'm telling you is you need to regenerate yourself, and if you are aligned personally with the principles of regeneration and the place you work or things you do in your life are also aligned with those principles, you will have an abundant, wonderful, flourishing life, organization, and much success. And we will come together all as one on this planet. One last thing to that. In all living systems, in biology, ecology, all living systems and their subsystems, 1 plus 1 never, ever equals 2. It's always a super exponential and verges on quantum time. They say, Mark, what's that word salad? What's that word soup? That's a mouthful. What a bunch of baloney. In our world, we've had debates about AI being sentient, technology being sentient. Blake Lamar left Google and landed the AI because he said it's gone sentient. It's a sentient being. It's a self-aware. Have we domesticated technology or has it domesticated us? And more importantly, why haven't we ever had the debate, like with Blake Lamar and AI being sentient? I've never heard anyone say, I'm worried about that bumblebee becoming sentient because it might take me over. I'm worried about that mycelium or that plant becoming sentient because it might take me over. It might rule the world. I want you to know that the natural world, plants, bees, fungus, mycelium, have been sentient for 3.8 billion years. And we've never had that. So don't worry about AI. Let's use AI for good. Let's use technology for good. Because the natural world, it has been sentient for 3.8 billion years. It's time to respect it, to restore and regenerate it, live in harmony with our world. As we think about quantum computing, quantum mechanics, the natural world was a beginning of quantum mechanics. These plants, animals, have been quantum mechanically for 3.8 years. The reason we want a quantum computer is to figure out how in the hell does a plant create photosynthesis, oxygen, heal the soils, capture carbon, and produces tons of food in a quantum way. That's why we developed a quantum computer. So that was the start of the quantum green revolution, to figure out how the natural world for 3.8 billion years has been acting quantum mechanically. So I leave you with those things to ponder that our indigenous elders in the room already know. and we're just figuring out, and we're trying to use technology to figure it out. And you need to understand that that's why we're using it. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a successful Climate Week. And let's regenerate this world together.
Thanks so much, Mark. So, I think that's a perfect segue for Alex. Because Alex is a technologist, a thinker. You'll have to explain this to me. Oh, everyone, it's just too complicated.
Thanks, and yes, it's an honor to be here. I'm going to kind of follow what Mark was saying. Technology for good. Sounds simple, but it's a thing that we haven't really been good at doing. We love our technology. It moves forward, and we move with it. But then backwards. People are doing that wrong. And then we have to be able to figure out how to take the lessons from our ancestors, the balance that we need so desperately for our planet lives, and have technology work for us for good, as Mark kind of mentioned. I'll go over a couple of examples. So, I'm a technologist, I build things. But I work on moonshot projects. I work on large global scale projects. Things that we identify as the biggest problems, the biggest concerns for humanity in the future of our civilizations. And what are we doing? How do we use technology in order to solve those? Well, good and bad here. We actually have a lot of answers. We have a lot of really fascinating tools. However, we are terrible at applying those tools properly. I'll give you an example of one of the things we talked a little bit about health. So one of the projects I work on is healthcare. It's micro-robots that go inside the human body. How powerful and how scary is that? Right? We actually have technology. I swallow robots all the time. They go in and swim around inside and able to do phenomenal things. Like every single one of us would love to know what's actually going on inside us. Like we don't know. We spend all this time on the outside, but how we work and how we function and how we grow and how our longevity is all based on what's going on inside. And it's really hard to look inside. And we can do it. But we've also seen all the sci-fi movies, so a lot of wrong ways this could go. So how do we do that? The other thing that I want to kind of really, we're here on Climate Week, and so I want to talk about some climate projects. Obviously, we all know the big things. We have to decarbonize. You know what? That's great. We have the idea how to do it. We know how technology can help do that. The problem is that we're so far behind. We're about 20, 30 years behind schedule. The other thing besides decarbonizing, our transportation, our energy, our agriculture, our steel and concrete, like all the things that we love to build, terrible, we need to decarbonize. That has to happen immediately and super fast. And then we also have to recarbonize. So we have polluted the planet terribly. And we have to come up with methods in order to pull that carbon back out of the atmosphere. It's not going to be easy. We're probably 50 years behind schedule right now. And then the third area is that societies have to adjust and adapt. And that's generational. It actually takes us a long time. We kind of talked about being like this super capitalist in one part of the day, and you're going to go, drive your Uber all the way across town and go eat your great steak dinner, right, tonight. And then you're going to come back and you're going to do a Zen climate moment. And so our societies are not structured. And so how are we kind of restructure that? So these are big problems. We have to solve those problems. What I work on is the time thing, right? We're 25, 50, 75 years behind schedule. And our planet is super delicately imbalanced. And we are on the verge of just falling off balance. We hear about these tipping points. We know these tipping points. This super delicate balance, we can use technology in order to buy us time. We can hold some of the ecosystems together, hopefully long enough for all of these other things to come into play. That's kind of what I do. And so for us, right, the scientists and the engineers that go into the environment and apply our technology in order to hold the planet together long enough for us to catch up. Well, gosh, that sounds pretty awesome and pretty scary, all in the same mix of things. If we're doing it wrong. If we apply just technology for the sake of technology, if we think we're just going to, just go on and be the saviors of everything that we want with technology, we have to integrate the lessons of our ancestors. We have to come back to a concept of balance. And so how do we bridge that? That is the work at hand. We have all the voices, we have all the knowledge that's existed. maybe for billions of years of the mycelium world, how do we bring that to today, to the scientists and engineers who have the answers? We know what to do. We can solve these problems, but we have to do it in the right way. And so I'm here to listen, to learn, and to collaborate. Right? This is a partnership. We have to bring in all of these people and all of these voices and all of these capabilities in order to solve this. So, that's the offer. We have answers. We have solutions. Please come help us figure out how to do it right. This is time. We don't have time to figure this out 50 years from now, even 20 years from now. The time is exactly right now. With that, I'm just setting that as a basis.
Can I just have you
Please.
just explain some of the things that you're talking about so that we don't think too specific?
Very good. Okay, let's talk about one very specific one. I'll pick one that is the easiest of all the scary ideas that are out there. Okay? Ice preservation. We have a phenomenal amount of water stored in ice around the planet. Right? 270 feet of global sea level rise if we lose all the ice. Think of what that would do to change. We lose all the island nations, we lose all the coastlines, all the coastal cities decimated if we lose all that coast. There are no tipping points in Antarctica as an example. Okay? There's glaciers. In Western Antarctica, it's a very strange area where the ice, a phenomenal amount of ice, 2 kilometers of ice, is sitting on land below sea level. Say that again, below sea level. What do we know about our oceans? Our ocean temperatures are rising. Right? We're having this impact from global temperatures. So these glaciers are just losing ice at a tremendous rate. These 2 kilometers of ice is sliding on water less than a centimeter of water. Slip and slide, right? This whole thing is just sliding off into the ocean. And if we lose some of these deep channels, all of these warm oceans are going to rush in, decimate Western Antarctica. Western Antarctica is only 30 feet of global sea level rise, so we'll lose most of the island nations and Florida and a couple things like that. New York, we'll just have a 30-foot wall around it. It's a big deal, okay? We can stop that. So what do? We can go to Antarctica. We can drill holes. We know how to do that. We can pump the water. This is water that has been created due to climate change. Okay, this water that we're sliding. We pump the water out, and we'll cause the ice to contact the ground again and go back to the slow glacial pace of movement. What does that do? That buys us hundreds of years of saving all these islands and saving all these coasts. Imagine how much population has to move, what that leads to in terms of war and scarcity of resources and plagues and all the things that will happen when we have this mass transit of population. So, should we go to Antarctica? Drill some holes, pump some water out, cause that, slow that down, buy us more time. Sounds great. However, let's do it the right way. Let's bring in indigenous knowledge on this. Let's not just push technology for the technology's sake. Let's get the locals involved. Let's make sure we understand what the ecosystem is and what are the impacts for these things globally. This is the easy one, ice preservation. Everyone should be like, yeah, sure. So I'm probably living in Antarctica, but it is a spiritual place. It's a very sacred place. And so how do we kind of do our science? How do we help the planet with the tools and technologies we have without upsetting the balance and maybe putting us into origins? So there's an example of how technology might be able to directly impact our future and advance on the planet.
Now I'm going to call on David Duncan, who is also looking at science vectors, the microbiome of the planet, and many other things.
Really great introduction. Anyway, I'm David Duncan, and I guess I missed the sort of artists, writers part of the program this morning because I was up in Boston and didn't get down here until lunchtime. So they stuck me, Johnny, very kindly put me on the science and technology part, and that's actually what I write about. I'm a journalist, and I write for Wired and Vanity Fair. I've been with ABC News. I've been all over the world covering different aspects of science and technology, mostly life sciences, but in the last couple of years, I've pivoted more to climate change. Partly how climate change affects healthcare, human health. We're just one thing from the planet. But that's mostly what we've been working on. I also want to say, I'm part-time creative director over at CURE, where the main, or most of the UN Science Summit is taking place over in Union Square. I'm hoping you all can get over there. We have an amazing program going on there. It's been going on for a couple of weeks. It's been going on the rest of this week. I believe that a little bit into next week. So, but, you know, I gotta say, and I hope nobody's here from CURE, but it's one of the best parts of Climate Week, what Johnny puts together here. And you all are really lucky to be here. Anyway, so what I'd like to do, I'd like to, since I'm pivoting here to technology, I'd like to indulge one of the oldest technologies of humankind. And it's one that it's mostly free. It doesn't take a lot of investment, although it does take some investment sometimes to actually make it. This is called storytelling. Okay? And one of the greatest, weapons, if you want to look at it that way, or I guess, tactics we have is to use storytelling. I've kind of shortened this, but I'd like to read a brief essay that I wrote. And this has a little technology in it, but it's mostly a personal story. And again, we know how powerful human stories can be. And as we're hearing about policy, technology, science, all these details, I think it's really important for us to focus on these personal stories. And one of the most powerful stories happen, or some of the most powerful stories, when someone influences others. And this is a story, it's called Silent Spring in '60. This was 2 years ago. My mom was Rachel Carson, okay? And if you all were here last year, I did mention this in passing, because my mother is really why I'm here, and partly Rachel Carson is why I'm here. I think a lot of us, if we go back, I was barely alive when Rachel Carson in Silent Spring came out, but I think we all know about that. But let me just read this, and it is a personal story, but it's also hopefully a little bit inspiring. So, only within the moment of time represented by the present century is one species, man, acquired significant power to alter the nature of the world. Okay, that's a quote from Silent Spring. Rachel Carson wrote these words in a book published in the autumn of 1962. And by the way, that was Climate Week in 1962. I don't think there was a Climate Week in 1962, but it actually came out this week, 62 years ago. So maybe the first Climate Week, or at least those who are thinking that way. Okay, that same summer, 60 years ago, my artist and bohemian mom read Silent Spring. Mom was about to turn 30 years old, and like millions of people, discovered through Rachel Carson a passion for preserving non-human life that for my mother blazed high. It helped steer her to a life's quest that culminated earlier this summer with my family spreading her ashes across the tall grass of Prairie National Preserve in eastern Kansas. Founded in 1996, my mother's fiery advocacy in art helped to make these 11,000 acres of big bluestem, profusions of wildflowers and birds and grazing buffalo possible, saving a tiny sliver of ecosystem that once stretched from Canada to Mexico from near extinction. I still have my mother's battered copy of Silent Spring, the original fern green cover torn and frayed. Rachel Carson was an unlikely superstar of ecology, an introverted 55-year-old marine biologist from Maryland. In Silent Spring, she transformed advocacy into poetry and into a powerful warning that the recent activity of species, Homo sapiens, was playing havoc with the web of life on our tiny world-blue planet that might ultimately lead to silence. Silence is a metaphor, but also is an unthinkable reality if no more birds remain to sing, crickets to chatter, or frogs to croak. Silence is in a pregnant hush. Silence is in what's lost when humans recklessly put their own species ahead of, quote, the robin in Michigan or the salmon in Maricati. Silence eventually come for us too. Few books or works of art in any medium has so eloquently made the case that carpet bombing poisons into nature to satisfy our short-term needs and desires at the cost. Carson challenged more than the foolishness of indiscriminate pest eradication using deadly chemicals, and in modern terms of pumping carbon into the finite atmosphere. She questioned the entire premise of human exceptionalism, the notion that God gave Adam and Eve dominion over the earth and all the beasts. When Carson wrote in the United States in the mid-20th century, human exceptionalism was rampant among Americans and much of the Western world. Don't stand in the way of progress, I remember people smugly saying in the late 60s when I was a little boy, as if anyone would dare do such a thing. But one woman did dare, the eloquent biologist who previously had written bestsellers about oceans, a woman no less, one of her misogynist detractors, audaciously telling the boys what was what. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. This is quite, I mean, she got an incredible vitriol response from a lot of people. Time Magazine called her emotion-fanning words, and others dismissed her as hysterical and unqualified. The Silent Spring captivated millions of people concerned about the robins that usually appeared in their backyards, heralding spring, which had vanished. It attracted the attention of President John F. Kennedy, and kind of we know what happened then. I'm going to cut to my mom here. In October of 1962, my mother, Patricia DeBose Duncan, was a gift artist living in Kansas City, Missouri, and the mother of two small children. I was 4 years old. She listened to jazz, shaped at the housewife ethos and wore black turtlenecks like a beat poet. In search of a cause, she found hers when she read Silent Spring. Stirred by Carson, Mom infused her art, photography, poetry, and writing with a deep reverence for nature. She shared Carson's astonishment and anger at the blindness of people who nuke nature to kill a few pests and make truckloads of money, behaving as if losing a few songbirds didn't matter when set against the technological miracle of a styrofoam cup. With extraordinary zeal, my mother started cataloging with her camera the litter and dead streams of smoke belching from nearby factories on our otherwise idyllic middle-class town on the eastern edge of the Great Prairie. Sorry, guys. Soon after, my mother discovered the tallgrass prairie that was right under our noses. An ecosystem of profound beauty that a century earlier had been transformed into fields of soybeans, corn, alfalfa, and sunflowers. Learned from botanists, ornithologists, mammalogists, microbiologists, and historians. Before settlers arrived with their plows and fences, a vast sea of grassland had stretched from central Canada to Mexico, with grasses like big blueskin growing 10 feet tall. The land was thick with shrubs, milkweed, flowers, birds, snakes, shrews, wolves, grizzlies, antelope, and buffalo. Mom also met and befriended Native Americans living on reservations and heard their sad and beautiful stories about the land before. In 1971, she formed the nonprofit Save the Tallgrass Prairie and recruited like-minded friends, scientists, Native Americans, and others to join. She forged ties with national environmental organizations and befriended the likes of David Brower, founder of Friends of the Earth. So, sorry guys, should have read this before I came up here. Anyway, let's see.
This is the hardest thing for a writer to do, to cut chunks of the
I know. Well, it's just a little bit last minute coming in. Yeah, let's see. Anyway, it was kind of fun watching my mother. I mean, I literally woke up and the Today Show was on, and she was debating Bob Dole, Republican Kansas senator, about the prairie. It was a kind of a gentle time because Bob Dole was very nice to her, thought she was feisty but wonderful, and she went on basically get this Tallgrass Prairie National Reserve approved, and she was one of the people that helped get it approved by Congress. And another Republican, Nancy Nassabaum, another senator from Kansas, was the one behind it. And it was kind of amazing a couple of years ago, after she died, for us to be in the prairie that she had preserved And one of her most iconic photographs is is of a stone schoolhouse sitting in the middle of the prairie. And you've got the clouds over it. It looks like a palm of a hand. There's clouds coming over this beautiful prairie with buffalo in the background and this old stone schoolhouse. And that's where we scatter ashes. And anyway, just a little bit of a story here. And if you want to read the whole thing, it's on Medium, by the way. And I'm happy to provide the link to that. But it's a little story about the power of telling stories. And my mother read one of the most powerful stories that brought many of us here, what it led her to do. And I hope that inspires us all to go out our own stories. And who knows, we were inspiring when you're telling your story.
Thank you so much, David. David is an incredible writer, and one of his books that's so interesting to me is Human Robot Futures, talking to robots, tales from our human robot futures. So wonderful to look at the humanity through all these different lenses. And one of the other areas, he's the director of the Center for Life Science Policy at UC Berkeley and top creative writer at Stanford. So wonderful coming together from multiple perspectives. So that leads me now to Lucian, who is also an incredible creator. He creates games, but he also is working with AI. And Lucian, please share with us what you're doing. And then right after Lucian, we're going to transition to the next panel, and we're going to watch a film by Jorge.
Thank you, and well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I'd like to start by honoring and thanking you for being here, our elder Indigenous brothers and sisters. It's an honor to speak before you. And I'd love to also honor my own ancestors that were very much part of building New York. I come from the Astor family, and I'm the seventh-generation grandson of John Jacob Astor, who became the wealthiest man in the world off the back of this city, of building this city, building a new library, and did many things. And I think this first question that I've asked myself is, how do we go from our family karma to our planetary dharma? That's a question that's pondered my life purpose. And with it has been the question, how do we transition from this quest to be billionaires to a quest to create billions of heirs? This age of opportunity, this golden moment that we find ourselves in, where we can quite truly transform every aspect of our system. Yet despite this unique moment in history that we find ourselves in, and that arguably has been prophesized for generations, we find ourselves suffering an epidemic of incrementalism, a plague of apathies, being conquered by dystopia. Quite literally, we have a story that is leading to our own destruction. So how do we flip the script? Tell a new story that invites us to keep hope alive, that invites us to rise to our own, not just individual potential, but our collective potential that goes beyond anything any of us can presently imagine. How do we do that? You know, we've had great thinkers gone before us that have showed us the way that we can do that. Buckminster Fuller has been quoted here by Mark, that he said, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Do you think we're building new models right now? Is the UN Pact for the Future building a new model? Or is it yet more tweaking of the current system? Taking us, if we need to go to north, and we're presently going south, taking us to south-west, but missing the mark. So how do we get to north, is the question. At United Planet, our answer is we start from north. We start from the place we wish to be. We start from the future we wish to create. You know, Einstein said the only distinction between the past, present, and future is time. Sorry, the only distinction between the past, present, and future is a stubbornly persistent illusion. So the question here is, how do we use time, and the time in the quantum sense, to design the future we wish to create? So if we can communicate with the wisdom of our ancestors, surely if we understand quantum time correctly, we can channel the wisdom of our descendants too. We can listen through our own intuitions to the guidance of our descendants. That the community channels go both ways. So how do we start to think about the planet as an ecocentric civilization quest to upgrade the system and include a much broader horizon of time? You know, our indigenous elder brothers and sisters talk about the 7th generation prophecy. This inclusion of 7 generations gone before us and 7 generations going into the future. What if we could, instead of quarterly capitalism, expand our horizon point to those 180 years in both directions? How would we do that? And so Buckminster Fuller had an idea for this. He called it the world game. He said there was going to come a decade. He called it the design science decade. The decade where every aspect of our world would be gamified in order to work for 100% of all life, in the shortest time frame possible, with least ecological harm. How would we create Bucky's vision of the world game? That's been an obsession of my recent life. And so we created the United Planet. And it was based on this premise that started with that JFK speech, where JFK said, by the end of the decade, we're going to put a man on the moon and bring safety back to Earth. And legend has it, following that speech, James Webb, who ran the NASA Apollo program, threw a party to celebrate landing on the moon in 1961. When Barbara Bucks Hubbard told me that story, a penny dropped. I was like, that might be the strategy that could go all the way. What if we could start by celebrating that which we were going to do? What if we could start, instead of the moonshot, with the earth shot, was we created the future, the more beautiful our hearts know as possible. And we start from that field of collective intelligence. And from that place, we can actually reverse engineer the strategy together. Some of you might have seen that film, Ready Player One, where it's one big car race. It's a great metaphor for the planet because we're playing this zero-sum game of the faster car race. We're investing in companies to drive a little bit faster, to get greater profits. And it is the tragedy of the commons that comes at the expense of this faster horse race. We're operating a finite game when we need to play an infinite game. And unfortunately, win-lose games in the age of exponential technology equal lose-lose games, where there's no winners here. So the question is, how can we shift the game dynamics into win-win, win for all, where we win when we all win? How do we program that? And that's what we are prototyping at United Planet. We created a Planet Game, which is an immersive experience where we invite leaders to step into the future that they are working on creating, to role-play their future self as Gaians, as citizens of Gaia, as planetary citizens, and tell the story in the present tense of what the world looks like when we're in that place. And we fill those stories and we start with this first piece, which is the narrative is the front line. So if we can create popular stories that transform the design of our system, we can then start to train AI to not just be artificial intelligence, to be augmented intelligence, to include the 3.8 billion years of wisdom and intelligence that Gaia has. Now, at our unique moment of disposal, this unique moment where we need all of the intelligence we can get. We need the intelligence of the whale nation, of the bee nation, of the hummingbird nations, of all species on Earth, to start to guide us with a greater awareness that we are actually on a sentient, living, and intelligent planet, that we are part of also the planetary immune system. They're like planet T cells. So what if we could use our own stories of the horizon point of our imagination to train Gaia AI, a Gaia augmented intelligence, to represent the interests of all generations, all life, not othering, not us and them, left and right and wrong, but all life. All life, more than human life, but also the future, including the interests of our descendants, and the descendants of all life on planet Earth. And so with that, what if we could go beyond and start to use that AI to create an entirely new form of financing? What if we could encode money to never be corrupted, to go to exactly where it's having maximum impact in the world? What if we could take money and use gravitational power of that money to pull the future into the reality now? What if we could finance from the future backwards the systemic transformations that were necessary for us to go beyond this age of separation, this limited age of the nation state that isn't serving us? And as long as we put all our eggs in the basket of nations, we will continue to separate and other and fail. So the question here is, can we use time as our best friend? Can we program the future into reality now? And our hypothesis here is yes, we can. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you so much. That was wonderful, and time is always a challenge. So Gail, I think you're here. You have your as we're transitioning, we're going to put on the screen Ulysses' film, and it's just a couple of minutes. And Jorge he spoke this morning, and this is a film about the Kogi people. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Tan, we have a plan in action to restore the balance of the planet. We are acting in Sierra Nevada from Santa Marta. I will share these little minutes. Please put attention. And after, we have some invitation for you. And to come with us to Sierra Nevada and make agreements in the Astral School that we were thinking with help from some friends, and go together to the work together in these agreements and come back to the United Nations in November and open the Office of the Future. Okay? Excuse me, I will present this and the door opens. La Sierra Nevada es llamada el corazón del mundo porque está en el eje que cruza el meridiano del agua, el meridiano del fuego. Es decir, estamos debajo de la órbita, pero está en una región de satélites. Los pueblos originarios, a diferencia del resto del mundo, han sabido vivir con la naturaleza. Entre los demás hemos vivido en la naturaleza. Es una poca palabra, pero es una gran diferencia. Mientras vayan a ser funcionales con la materia, podría ser funcionales. Los hobbies, las autoridades ancestrales de la Sierra Nevada, el corazón del mundo, nos han venido explicando y expresando durante muchos años una manera de salvaguardar la naturaleza para poder vivir bien. Y a través de esa recuperación hemos podido recuperar también muchos elementos que son necesarios para salvaguardar y proteger la existencia de los recursos naturales.
Reconnecting and restoring that balance. And we do that over and over from community to community. It doesn't matter if they're coming from Polynesia, coming from the Arctic. It's all about restoring the balance.
Hemos tenido la oportunidad de trabajar en articulación con distintos sectores públicos, sociales y privados. Y entonces en este momento se hace imperativo que es indispensable desarrollar un plan que nos una a todos por la continuidad de la vida.
Porque estamos en una situación donde hemos abusado de la parte material, nos hemos perdido durante muchos años por la razón. Entonces ahorita vamos a reintegrarnos, tenemos un plan de impacto para restablecer el balance del planeta que vamos a presentar martes y miércoles en el Foro Mundial Económico Internacional aquí en el Centro de Convenciones. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que estamos haciendo con estos retos que se ganan antes? Entonces, antes de la Revolución Francesa, quienes administraban lo público eran ellos. Entonces, están volviendo a empoderar a las autoridades tradicionales que han sabido vivir con la naturaleza mientras nosotros hemos vivido de la naturaleza. Es una pequeña palabra, pero una gran diferencia.
Entonces nosotros para ordenarnos entre nosotros, primero tenemos que tener los 4 elementos limpios.
Entonces tenemos un plan para restablecer el balance del planeta en 4 años, que acuerda los distintos estados. Un año recuperando territorios, otro año recuperando las aguas, otro año ayudando a restaurar los generadores de aire, otro año solucionando los problemas que hay con los fuegos intensos.
La Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta hace 500 años entró la conquista hacia América. Pero no solamente entraron los conquistadores, sino que llegó la razón, llegaron los derechos humanos, luego llegó el vivir de la naturaleza, verla como un recurso, el vivir mejor, la comparación con el otro, lo individual y el tener. Los próximos 500 años necesitamos reemplazar la razón por el equilibrio, el balance, los derechos humanos por los derechos de la tierra, el vivir de la naturaleza por el vivir con la naturaleza, el vivir mejor por el buen vivir, revitalizar lo que tenemos y somos, hacer lo mejor que podamos, lo individual por lo comunitario, el tener por el ser.
Todos tenemos un nombre y un cuerpo. El nombre es inmaterial, por ejemplo, planeta es material, aire, tierra, fuego. Inmaterial, el tiempo. Sin tiempo tampoco podemos vivir. Los pueblos originarios lo que hacen es que cuidan el patrimonio inmaterial. Entonces los pueblos originarios de Asia, el dragón chino, el sol naciente, son los guardianes del fuego. Los pueblos originarios, los mapuches, los aymaras, son los guardianes de la tierra. Los pueblos originarios de las Polinesias son los guardianes del agua. Los pueblos originarios de Alaska, los Mohawk, son los guardianes del aire. Nosotros estamos acá. De acuerdo a la ubicación geográfica, todos tenemos una misión como semillas originarias. Entonces, cada año tiene un ordenador. Lo que estamos haciendo en el plan de impacto es una interconexión de geometría. Digamos, cogemos el planeta, en un principio escogemos 2 edificios en el mundo. Por ejemplo, Monsanto, Bayer, Sequita, Dol, son el plan de la Tierra. Exxon, Shell, Explata, Glencore son el plan del fuego. Google, Movistar, son el plan del aire. Coca-Cola, Heineken, son el plan del agua. El desarrollo no es la explotación de los recursos, sino la multiplicación de los recursos. Entonces ellos tienen la responsabilidad de mitigar la restauración de los elementos. Entonces es muy importante recuperar primero la tierra y en esa tierra recuperar los objetos sagrados. Entonces el plan de impacto es vinculación de la sabiduría ancestral con el conocimiento moderno por la restauración del balance de la tierra. Respetar la cultura, la sabiduría ancestral, con los niveles, lo social, lo público y lo privado.
La gente que vende agua, aquí le pone por ejemplo, el tiempo solo, el tiempo ya. La sostenibilidad social y después la financiera. Entonces vamos a ayudar a pagar a los que han pagado por eso.
Unidos somos más fuertes.
Y muchos trascenderos.
Inspírate a incorporar, a incluir, a incidir para la restauración del balance en la tierra.
Entonces, like the hummingbird, we need to fly back in a spiral, open our heart, our emotions, go back a little, and continue like. So it's time to go back. Time is not God, time is life. So we need to go back a little, and continue. The unity. Truth, more unity, and continuity. Okay, thank you very much, and welcome. Welcome this month, Kurt is going. Now we have an astral school in connection with this sun and with other suns. This galaxy is not only one, we call this galaxy Siquajal. But the next sun is coming. Entonces, this connection from this sun with the other sun is Nubahala, the astral way, where the astral and ancestral are the same. Future is the origin. Okay, thank you.
Welcome to our panel on data cooperatives and digital economies. Some of our panelists are missing. Maybe I'd like to take the opportunity to invite a indigenous representative to I'm going to start. Maybe you want to join us? The Amazon is often referred to as a global because it has impacts the entire plant ecosystem, including biodiversity, carbon capture, and oxygen generation. And just as the Amazon forest is considered as a commons, digital technology can also be a commons. Everybody knows Wikipedia as the well-known example of what data commons can be. So as the world continues transformation, the impact of technology becomes more and more pervasive. And that's also true for the Amazon forest. From the phones we have in our hands to the satellites monitoring our planet. Digital information or data is at the center of this digital transformation. But as this change deepens, the critical question is who controls this data flows? Right now, much of it is in the hands of corporations, big tech, and developers. But what about the communities that are directly impacted by decision making stemming from this data-driven decision making? And what about those people living in the Amazon forest? For example, deforestation data is collected through satellites or drones or on-the-ground observations. This data shows how trees are being burned by wildfires or cut down for exploitation, such as timber, agriculture, or mining. But the people living in these areas, indigenous communities, they do not have a say, they do not have any control about this information. Yet they are the ones the most affected by this deforestation. And similarly, all the regeneration efforts that use data to measure biodiversity gains, etc., also is including these very communities from the inside and foresight capability to the right from the data. So this imbalance reminds us from an historical example of the printing press. Back in the day, the printing press was in the hands of a select few, and that stayed like that for several decades or centuries. But eventually, access to information becomes democratized. And we believe that data cooperatives could be the tool that does the same with the digital information ecosystem. I can take another example, food systems. We live in a world with industrial food, but we also have now organic food. And these data cooperatives could be the organic food of digital information. So what do they aim? It's basically to put data and power in the hands of the people and local communities. So ensuring that these people directly impacted by issues like deforestation and regeneration have control about their data to safeguard the land, to hold others accountable, and to drive meaningful change. So data cooperatives are simply organizations while communities collectively manage and control the data, ensuring that decisions about its use are made through community oversight and stakeholder cooperation. Because that partnerships are individual. So these models allow for governments, businesses, individuals to work together to share data in a way that benefits all stakeholders, especially those who are the most affected by it. So however, some questions remain. How to make sure that intentions do not get overshadowed by these tools that are very important. So to explore this further, we are joined by these wonderful panelists today, guided by the belief that success is in the process, and that process is cooperative. Thank you. And I would like to start with our friend and asking, what do you think? Because the internet and new technologies they present many upsides, but also they could be very dangerous because we do not control them. So what are your hopes and fears regarding digital technologies, the internet, and all of this?
nuevas innovaciones tecnológicas, en el cual también es Internet. Un ejemplo práctico que puedo responder. La tecnología de Internet como herramienta nos ha servido en todos los procesos de resistencia que hemos llevado a los pueblos originarios, pueblos indígenas, frente a la agresiva incursión de las grandes corporaciones que han llegado, pero nosotros también hemos usado como estrategia estas tecnologías para poder avanzar y denunciar a la opinión pública nacional e internacional.
Thank you for the question and for the second opportunity to speak. So technology as well as internet has served us in all our processes of resistance against the violent and aggressive incursions of the transnational companies that come into our territories.
Y son procesos de adaptación que hemos venido llevando no solamente en la modernidad actual. Hace nuestros tatarabuelos, nuestros ancestros usaron la lanza de chonta, usaron la piedra como herramientas. Posteriormente integraron el machete, la hacha. Después también sustituimos, bueno, a pesar de que tenemos las cerbatanas, también usamos carabinas. Pero todo esto siempre ha sido una herramienta para nosotros poder también adaptarnos, moderarnos, y que seguimos usando, considerando que si se usa de manera negativa o se usa para hacer un daño, todas estas herramientas son peligrosos, igual que el dólar, que no es un fin para nosotros, sino más bien es una herramienta para poder defender los territorios, conservar la biodiversidad, defender la vida, defender los derechos de la naturaleza. Si no lo usamos bien, prácticamente sería una gran amenaza, y que casi la globalización está en todas partes. Pero ante la globalización no podemos cerrarnos, no podemos ser un muro, sino más bien de manera inteligente adaptar y usar como una herramienta que sirve para poder avanzar. En ese sentido lo vemos de manera positiva, pero si lo usamos mal, prácticamente es una terrible amenaza para las comunidades.
So we have been adopting, not just us, but also our great grandfathers who used spears and rocks. But when they adapted, they used machete, and later also firearms. And it's been a process of adaptation to defend and resist, to protect our territories and the rights of nature as well. And we are aware that there are risks that it can be used negatively, but we have been adapting as a way to defend our territories. But if not used in a good way, it can also be a great risk, or a tremendous risk. So you have to know how to use it in a good way.
Terminar, hoy en día, por ejemplo, para la gestión consciente del territorio se está usando algunas tecnologías muy importantes, por ejemplo, el sistema de Global Forest Watch, que es un sistema de monitoreo del territorio, que también usamos el sistema de track, que es para poder monitorear directamente dónde están los impactos, los daños, y una serie de datos que lo estamos desarrollando, que es muy importante para la gestión del territorio. También en esta convergencia de la ciencia convencional y el conocimiento ancestral, es importante incorporar sistemas de acuerdos comunes que respeten el conocimiento, la propiedad intelectual, todo lo que se refiere a la ciencia, sus sistemas en el cual si se obtiene datos, por ejemplo, del ADN y todos esos sistemas físico-químicos que se va investigando, tienen que llevar bajo un acuerdo de etiquetas que nos permitan tener derecho a ser colaborativo. En eso estamos trabajando y lo vemos de manera positiva cuando hay ese equilibrio, esa democracia, esas iguales condiciones para cooperar. Eso es muy importante en la ciencia y la tecnología y la colaboración con los pueblos indígenas. Muchas gracias.
So, just to finish, I would like to give a concrete example, Global Forest, which is a system that anybody can use, including indigenous peoples, to monitor what's happening to their territories and to their forests. And it's been very useful to have this sequence of information. And also, when you collect data from indigenous territories, it's important to have a common agreement for how the data should be used. And it's important to have this balance of what the data should be used for and how it should be used, and ensure the democratic governance of the data. And when those parameters are respected, we see it in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To follow up on this question of territory and democratic governance of data, I would like to call Wei Feng, who is Chair of the People Center of the Internet, Chair of the IEEE Technical and Sustainability, and a member of the Wei.
Because I'm short, I usually stand on the side. So I'm really happy to be here. And when you talk about data, it's a kind of unknown concept out of the people who have been exposed to computers. Last week, we had a talk by Alan Kay, one of the computer visionaries. And this talk was inspired by a mother in Cambodia. Why? Because she was the mother of an AI product manager. Her son was born in Cambodia. She sacrificed everything so that he could go to MIT and study. And then he has been working, his name is Ben Heng, he's been working in Silicon Valley as an AI product manager. When he goes home to Cambodia, he asks his mother, do you know what is data? And he says this in Khmer. And she says, no, but I think they have a more modern Khmer word for data. So this is what is happening all around the world, that the whole idea of what is data, what is the name for it in all of these languages. We are living in a world where we're trying to make rules for something that people don't even have words for in some places. So let's go back to land, because I want to take the analogy of land rights, land property rights, to data rights. There's a saying 400 years ago that God made the earth, but the Dutch made the Netherlands. Why? Because in Europe, you know, the kings and feudal lords, and they kind of conquered the territory and had to work their farms and give most of their crops. But in the Netherlands, nobody claimed that land because it was swamp, because the ocean came in. But the Dutch, they built dikes. They protected the land so that they could grow food on it, so that they felt ownership of that land because they claimed it, they worked it. And in fact, when Louis XIV came to attack, I always think of this with Gail because he's Belgian. The Belgians now speak French because Louis XIV took over the Belgian area. But the Netherlands people, the Dutch, fought for the land. They fought for the land because they made it. Land rights and property rights have been evolving over the last few years. There's a famous economist from Latin America, Hernando de Soto. He has been saying that because you don't have established land rights in many areas, that the title of the property is not clear, people don't use that land to invest in what they could be doing. Now, that's happened to land. Let me tell you another story about land. Native Americans believe that the earth, fire, sky, it belongs to everyone. And when people came in and said, who does this land belong to? They said, it belongs to all of us. But those people said, well, if you're not claiming it, I'm writing my name as the owner of this land. That happened over and over again, and the end result is a terrible blot on US history called the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears was where the Native Americans were forced from their lands, which they had lived on for hundreds of years, because they did not realize the importance of establishing their legal rights. Because in their culture, this idea of writing things down and somehow you own it, it wasn't part of what they understood. Eventually, they understood there's a legal system in this Western that come in, and you need to establish your legal ownership. So they went to fight in the courts for their legal ownership of their land. They lost, and the result was the Trail of Tears. I'm here speaking because data, the idea of data is, and the legal framework for data is evolving now. Data is very, very different from physical goods. Knowledge is something that when you divide it, it multiplies. When you divide land, you get a smaller amount of it. So how we share and learn and multiply knowledge really depends on the legal structures that we use to define data. And these definitions have to be worked out and will be worked out in the lifetime of people listening to this talk. A lot has been, so don't accept that somebody knows. No one knows. Last week I was at the launch of the UNAI report. But the message I took away is we are at the beginning of a very long journey. And what's important is that future generations can benefit from AI and from data. But we have to work out how to do that. We don't want to have another Trail of Tears. There are 430 language families in the world. Most AI is trained on 4-5 languages. What's happening to the 425 other languages and the cultures and traditions and the stories that are not actually being gathered? So my proposal is that we should take this problem and turn it into an opportunity. That with data cooperatives, or creating data in all of these different languages, that data should be cooperatively governed by the peoples whose language that is. So the people's language is guarded by the people. And their stories and the access to that data for AIs or anyone else needs to be got through the rights of those people. Thank you.
Great speech, thank you. Now I would like to call Wanda Anwala. He's the founder and CEO of Digital Twin Labs. He was previously Chief Technological Officer of IBM North America, a blockchain pioneer, and also known for being the founder of the live video stream. Govinda
short. You really see their height only above the portion that is above the earth. You don't see their height that is underneath the earth. They are very, very strong and robust. My name is Gurmendra Arawaya. I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Labs, which is a venture studio and a strategy consulting and implementation company based on frontier technologies for societal and business problem solutions. Previously, I was the CTO for IBM North America, where I had the privilege of co-founding the blockchain business and putting out some of the earliest and largest enterprise blockchain-based departments. It's pretty interesting when you have the theme of this conference, which is the regenerative generation. And we are talking about that in an era of generative AI. So it's almost like an enigma wrapped in a mystery. I'll start with a few axioms and a few biases from my end. First of all, I know you all know this, but it easily escapes our attention whenever we talk about data. We synonymously think of it to be digital. Data is not just digital. Data is also analog. And most of nature, when we're talking about land and climate and forests, most of nature is actually analog. As my voice is transmitting to you, this technology between here and the recordings, which is sampling my audio at 8 times 16 times a second and converting it into digital format. My voice is audio. My voice is analog, sorry. My voice is analog. So most of nature is analog. So even if it is a non-digital phenomenon, it is data, like rainfall, like temperature, like taking a pulse, like temperature. But they can all be correlated into a certain identity, a certain phenomenon. So the risk of data and data privacy, those aspects are not limited to just data being digital, but it is also an analog phenomenon that happens naturally. Of course, when data is converted into digital format, just like this video of everybody can transmit and is going to be reviewed in its recording, potentially by hundreds of thousands and millions, as we are all, and you are all getting the message out. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that there is no physical revolution without a corresponding digital revolution. There is no physical revolution without a corresponding digital revolution, and vice versa. And that goes back to multiple eras of industrial revolution, of telecommunication, of railways and transportation and signaling, and a much longer elaboration on that point that I'll be teasing just now. So when we're talking about physical, it goes to my first point, data being physical as well. And then when we are talking about the revolutions as far as sustainability is concerned, none of that is possible without a corresponding digital revolution as well. My third axiom that I want to share and bias is around data cooperatives and a little bit more to the discussion over here. The real operative word in data cooperatives is we cooperatives, having done a little bit of justice to elaborating on the notion of data a moment ago. And the notion of cooperatives, if you break it down, just in my simple thinking, has two important elements to it. And one is governance, and the other is incentives. So when we look at the history, and this has been very well studied by Bailey herself, who was a pioneer in some of these areas, and her community on data cooperatives and digital infrastructures by MIT. It's been widely studied that the notion and the model of cooperatives comes, a lot of them come for examples in agriculture. In India, for example, there's an agricultural cooperative called Amul, and in the United States, you must have heard of Land of Lakes. It's actually a cooperative. So the governance models of those cooperatives, they led towards what data cooperatives should look like. So governance is really the key portion of the operative term of cooperatives, and the other operative portion of that is incentives. And now when we begin to borrow, and again with a little bias from blockchain, if we begin to borrow the intrinsic mechanisms of incentives that are available in blockchain-based ecosystems, marketplaces, platforms, that instruments, meaning intrinsically instruments in an incentive system in that platform of data cooperation, as opposed to having a human or a paper-based. Now, it could be very well complementary, and then it becomes a discussion of how much of that is intrinsically automated in governance and how much of that control is really being introduced. Right. I'll finish with those being a few theses that I want to stage. I'll wrap up with a few, sampling a few examples, and if we need to get into it, they'll be available as pieces and we can elaborate into it on some of my practitioner field work to operationalize some of these things. One and most pertinent to this setting is in the area of what is called an organization called RSPO, which stands for Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. And in the 80s, the WHO came to release evidence of correlation between trans fatty oil to mortality. And the world overnight pivoted towards an alternative, and that alternative became palm oil. So there was a massive demand, and they agreed from industries, which resulted in deforestation of major parts of the lands north of the equator, where palm forests happen out of the ocean. And so when you take your typical shopping cart from a grocery store, I don't remember the exact numbers, it was broadcast, the specifics. About 40 or 60%, regardless, a disproportionately large number of the items in your typical grocery cart have palm oil content in them. Right? From personal care to food to whatever. So now, how do you have sustainable palm oil? So the gap between so when you look at overall palm oil consumption, there's a huge gap between just crude palm oil and sustainable palm oil. Right? And that gap has stayed stagnant for many years, despite efforts by the RSPO, which is the largest nonprofit organization around certification and data of palm oil around the world. The other quick example I'll touch upon is what I did with the Gates Foundation, where I've been an advisor. And that is for the use and the measurement of efficacy in micronutrients for masses of humanity, particularly in the developing and underdeveloped world. And then within that, targeted specifically towards children and women of childbearing age. And there is pretty much clear line of sight on the nutrition, the nourishment of women of childbearing age, and therefore the fetus, and therefore the child born. Right? There's pretty much clear line of sight to the economics and the GDP of a particular country. If a child is born healthy, then other children begin to help. The father gets out of the farm and begins to help the family. There is more disease, more sickness, more malnourishment, which burdens the health system, and you begin to see the effect on the economy. So we looked at the use of new technology, particularly IoT, Internet of Things, AI, and blockchain, of course, for the provenance of micronutrients and its efficacy in commodity staple food, which all countries and all humanity consumes. The best example and most common example is iodine, which is embedded in salt that we all eat. That's an example of iodine being a micronutrient. And the efficacy of that depletes, and
as it travels through the supply chain, gets stashed in warehouses, large bags, in agriculture silos, and then in retail stores. So there has to be measurement that happens all along. Otherwise, the investments that are made upstream really are not very good. And mind you, these are, going back to the cooperatives, these are multi-decade spanning data collection and analysis and outcomes. There are a few other examples, but I go here, and those examples are around food tracking for contamination and recall, work with Walmart, and other examples, not necessarily to the forest, but have to do also with the earth, and that is the women over here with gloves, and that is the provenance of diamonds. I deployed the platform for global trading of diamonds for years, based on IoT, blockchain, and AI. And we all know the value of a diamond, and not just that, but also for purposes of counterterrorism and anti-money. So I just wanted to set a framework from my end on those three biases and axioms, and provide a few operational and few practical examples. Back to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Govinda. There is much to contribute. Next, I would like to invite Raphael Derib. Raphael, you're founder of Olcott.io. You are pioneering sustainability, carbon markets, and zero waste initiatives. I would like to ask you if your experience from Olcott, what lessons from the carbon markets can be applied to data cooperatives so that we can present environmental data both accessible and profitable for communities involved in conservation efforts.
Thank you, Gail, for this invitation and as well for this initiative. And I want to start the story about actually meeting with Gail at the World Economic Forum earlier this year, where actually we exchanged the different activities we were doing and seeing a lot of similarities and joint action. And in that purpose, there was also during earlier speakers' notes some mention about the notion of regeneration and regeneration by the central tenet of the circular economy. And I see the way that we treat the data as being very linear at the moment. We produce it, we consume it, and then we dispose of it, whereas we really need to have a circular way to get this data to be aggregated and then being reused for our purpose that was not initially designed in the way that we captured it. And that's a process that sees many different approaches, because we got the knowledge of the elders, that is the bottom-up approach. We got some data collection that is taking a top-down approach, and being able to leverage technology and data cooperate in a way that this data can be rendered accessible to a larger group makes it valuable tool for regeneration at many different levels. And these systems are the pillars of the structure, the infrastructure that can help us leverage collective knowledge, but also collective actions. And the example we mentioned about landtender, for instance, is definitely something that is a widespread information that is digested by many different bodies and can help to channel in the right actions and funds into the proper governance measures. And this is where all the questions that we had about data management, data governance, when they exposed them to us, was an eye in the future and getting into something that was a relief that we could collaborate with organizations that are thinking forward about the right way to defend the rights of the people that hold the data, so that they could also be incentivized into doing it in a way that is constructive and analytic, so that we have a system that is functioning by itself and evolving into a greater future. So one of the examples I want to give, and that was the one that we talked about at the beginning, is involving actually some of our partners in Senegal that are present here, from the SONAGED, which is an entity that is taking care of waste collection in Senegal, and we have an environmental project that is looking at segregating organic waste over there. The goal is actually to convert it into compost, and we get a generation of basically government-to-government type of carbon credits that can help to incentivize this operation from an infrastructure point of view. And what I explained to Yael was the fact that the data that we collect from this operation, we use it for answering to a methodology, but it can be used in many different ways. Some institutions, for instance, have an interest of like being able to showcase that if we remove 10,000 tons of like organic waste out of like the public system, and well, can prove that we turned it into something that is valuable, such as compost, that can power like green belts, we can correlate this probably to like a reduction of malaria in some places. And if we're able to actually demonstrate this reduction in malaria, we can actually translate this into perhaps better insurance for health systems, better loans at the country level. And there may be like small elements that combine together help the country to defend its interest and have like a collective data processing system. And so I see really the initiative as being like a form of data mycelium that like really has like a way to go into like all branches. Like the mycelium works with like mycorrhizal mechanism that one part of the forest is not like getting enough of like a nutrient, can actually be like channeled into like another. And of course I understand that it's not easy for sure. But like with like many existential threats at the moment, and the knowledge is what helps us to like collectively fight on the same pillars. There is another part of some things that we do where we see a great interest of like being able to be diversified data cooperatives. So we perform some environmental DNA testing in some places in Senegal, basically filtering about like 30 liters of water into a system that actually collects all the DNA that has been present over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And that generates like an immense amount of data from the invertebrates, the birds, the mammals, the fish, all ecosystems. Many people can have many different interests. Our interest over there is just to find the presence of like some threatened species that like our carbon methodology asks us to identify so that we can have like a benchmark about the success of our project in the future. And so we would just use this very complex mechanism for answering and ticking the box of like one red-listed IUCN species, and that would validate the process that we need to complete. But this immense amount of data is extremely valuable for many different ways, and we want to be able to like spread it at a larger like scale with like the community, the academia, the community, so that they can also replace different measures. And everybody is looking at like how we can visualize this information in a better way to decipher it and put it into action. And this is like an example of like many of the different activities that we can have, whether it's sargassum, whether it's like mangrove reforestation, or even like just like daily life that data is like basically, as we say, the recorded memory. And it is like an oil on mission. For the moment, we have to build the pipelines in order to get it like basically from the ground to the ledger so that it can be like actionable. So I'm very much looking forward to collaborate like more on this process. I feel really like an honor and privilege to be part of this effort, and I'm looking forward, as someone mentioned in the previous panel, about like the storytelling part that helps to make it like as inclusive as possible and relatable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raphael. It was very inspiring, and it shows all the new possibilities that open up when we open up also new models of governance. Now I would like to invite Wes Geisenbauer. He's VP of Sustainability and ESG at H-Bar Foundation. He leads climate and biodiversity initiatives. He's also the co-chair of GEPC's Carbon Emission Task Force. Wes, I would like to ask you, as VP of Sustainability and ESG at H-Bar Foundation, how do data cooperatives enabled by grantees of youth funds, and how do they use federal digital tools for biodiversity
understanding not just how we quantify the impact on our environment, but its emissions. Carbon markets, we sometimes think about offsets or biodiversity is how we got. And sometimes we consider credits and investments as part of that. But what we're really looking to do is understand in context how we're quantifying this through methodology, data, and built infrastructure so that folks can develop tools to better understand who said what and help consider how that value is used in both the corporate setting, but also by the stakeholders in the common grants. And so we give out grants for this infrastructure that's open source, it's digitally based, and we give out grants for applications for those who help enable communities. Folks like Rock General and team who are taking these projects and giving them tools to enable them to build it, whether it's teams like this team of Saint-Leger, who's looking at technical solutions around composting, or nature-based solutions where ultimately we're working in a biodiversity context with communities focusing on conservation or carbon markets. And what we do is we try to give these digital tools to help build agency so that folks can answer the questions that the global north values in the context of methodology, data metrics, and carbon. But we take those rules and also give them agency, answering data through specific points or attestations that we can then trace value to. But if we stop there, we answer questions on emission reductions or biodiversity impacts investment. And we only look at it from one perspective. I think it's really important that we also empower people with these digital tools to build properties that also push back on, well, what is the narrative around emissions and around biodiversity impact? Or we can actually ascribe values to what communities are thinking about. Communities have historically valued in past generations. Today, many times these financial instruments, whether it's carbon and biodiversity credits, are only thinking about the one side. But if we're able to express what we often call statistics or attributes, what is values, and we can show how funds make their way to communities to traditionally protect land, traditionally manage in ways that we remember over generations. Possibly we can also teach the folks who are investing in projects not just what they're focused on at the moment in emissions or specific actions about diversity or specific species, but potentially other types of values. I see the cooperatives as a way to be able to control that data, to ascribe value to it in ways that we previously haven't done about this market. The HBAR Foundation, bringing the balance sheet of the budget, is focused on that and understanding the activities that are happening, how finances use those activities, and how our next generation instruments can strive to be more than what we've done historically. So hopefully it looks like a really good question, but for folks who want to learn more about our grants, our programs, our investments, and how we're going to make those tools, but you reach out, we work with the standards, the applications level, we look at the types of opportunities we can help enable, please reach out and talk to us, apply for a grant, and see how we can work together, whether we can move applications and continue to grow that. See it all kind of item or valves, the friend as well here, or maybe if we're working with folks like it's in Saint-Leger, saying how can we copy this model or how can we learn from these models to build that future.
Thank you. We heard before that only 1% or less than 1% of funds located to indigenous communities actually arrive in the hands of these communities. So, and also to further the values and share these values on last but not least, I would like to call Sophie Rick. Sophie is an international policy advisor. UN advocacy on climate and humanitarian and the SDGs. And I would like to ask you, Sophie, given you work on climate and SDG advocacy at UN, how can the data collective model be leveraged to enhance global accountability and transparency in meeting international and environmental commitments?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to part of this panel. It's an honour to speak with you today. I mean, I'll try and offer a few reflections to try and answer the question. I think, firstly, what's important to highlight is that at the policy level, there are so many silos.
there are different UN agencies that work in their own specialisms and have different separate areas of turf which they feel very strongly about, and there is a real challenge in bringing them together. And we can see that with how the SDGs are divided. We see that with how the COP process is quite different from the SDG process, and then how they don't really speak to each other. And that's a big challenge for effective policy making and actually understanding how things really work at the level. And whereas when we look at the actual impact, and those are on the front lines of climate change, they don't distinguish between the silos that we distinguish at the international level. So what local research can do and can help is to help bring that narrative, to help bring those bridges across different policy areas where we are divided at the international level, but those front lines can really see how they come together and create a much more coherent narrative around that. And so I think that's where the role of local data that is locally owned can really help to influence international policy making. And having that bottom-up process where local data that is locally owned and that is collected and delivered by those on the front lines of the challenges we're trying to face is then fed up to the international level. So how do we feed that up? And there is where data cooperatives can come into play, is that if you have data cooperatives that inform community-based development programs to community-based development initiatives run by local authorities, if they then feed up into national or sort of regional and then national level plans, like national adaptation plans, and that then feeds up into the international level. And if you can have that process, what you end up with is a bottom-up, a real bottom-up level of policy making at the international level. Too often at the moment what we see now is international policy making made by a select few, often in the global north, in closed-door rooms with limited engagement of civil society and other stakeholders. Whereas what you can use by leveraging data cooperatives and having a much more bottom-up feed into that international policy making, it's important because it makes your policy making more effective, but it's also important from a justice perspective, from a voice perspective. You can get real local perspective into that international level. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and it takes time, but there are processes through which you can see data cooperatives go up the levels in policy making right up to the international level and bring much greater justice and accountability and voice into international decision making. And I think that accountability piece is really key, and that's where you can see not only local voice influencing international policy making in that perspective, but also holding them accountable for what they promise at the international level. Is at the local level where you can see, was that financing delivered? Did those policies and those promises made at the international level ever get fed down to the local level? And if you have that locally collected and known data, that's when you have a much more real story of what is delivered on the ground and what actually got translated through into action. Because as we're seeing yet again in the Summit of the Future, which is finished, we have a lot of promises made at the international level. And with the COP process, that is, case in point. The number of promises that have been made and not delivered on. So how do we use data cooperatives and locally sourced and generated data and citizen-led data to really hold the international architecture and governance system to account? So I think that the relationship between the policy and the data cooperatives is potentially a huge one for both justice and accountability. Thank you.
Fantastic. We do have Yanis who joined us from Germany, I guess. Unexpected, and it was a slight chance. He joined us today from Germany, and welcome. Yanis is the president of the Association of Computer Machinery, which represents 100,000 engineers. And hear anything now? We can hear you.
For a moment, I could not hear you, but as I said, it was the best effort. I'm very glad I joined you.
Can you hear us? All right, thank
for taking the time to join us here. As I mentioned, you are president of the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM. You are an award-winning advancement in data science. And I would like to ask you, as president of ACM and as a pioneer in data science, what governance mechanism should data cooperatives implement to ensure data privacy and security while promoting open data for climate action? Thank you.
I wish I was here from the beginning to hear the context that everyone has talked about. I'll give you an answer which hopefully will make sense for you. One of the key elements, I think, for data cooperatives is that they are governed by the owners. Whatever the community it is that comes together to form a data cooperative and share data, this data should be under the community's authority, under the community's control, if you will, so that the right mechanisms for sharing are established and the right constraints in terms of privacy and safety are established with the agreement of the entire community. Technologically, there are many ways to achieve that. I mean, there are safe, you can have safety servers, trusted experimentation facilities, trusted data environments that make sure that data will leave the space. And then you can use cryptographic techniques or for output privacy or secure multi-party computation for computing privacy, for computational privacy. I'm just throwing some technologies just to indicate that we know how to approach some things like this. Depends on the regulations that the community itself will put, and this is critical. And whoever wants to join a cooperative and share data should always be give and take. And the giving part, it should have a consent where someone should have the ability to say, hey, I want to share this data, or I want only under this circumstance, only by people who satisfy such and such rule, and essentially have a contract with the cooperative. And if it is a trusted community, this will give you the best in terms of sharing. Climate, much of the data that is related to climate needs to be open, needs to have no constraints, because there are environmental data, there are climate data, water data, and so on. But in order to have the right climate action, we also want behavioral data for people. We want to have behavioral data for companies. And so there are a subset of the data that we need for climate action needs to be respected in whatever privacy constraints the owners of the data have to put. And if you ensure that this privacy needs are respected, people will be more willing to share, and then making this safety-driven private data and the rest of the open data, and to have algorithmically applied whatever models, techniques are necessary, so that we can move to climate action. So this is what I would say. Just as a summary, the key thing is ownership by the community itself that forms the data governance. It shouldn't be in some big company or in some other generic. I'm just going to say.
ownership to security, ethics, accountability, community oversight, technical needs to achieve such objectives. Thank you so much for your input and your insights. Now, we do have a hard stop in less than 10 minutes, so I would like to give the chance for a reaction. Sophie mentioned the importance of locally validated data and data-driven policy making. We covered many subjects, so if you want to have a quick word, very quick, 1 minute max, and then we would like to end up. Thank you.
I want to reinforce what Sophia was saying. Locally validated data is critical. All of you who live in Western countries know about credit scores. You know that your credit score is often incorrect and you have to correct it. This is true of all data, that if the community, in fact, doesn't take responsibility to make sure that the data is accurate and correct, it is not dependable for making decisions. So it's great that they're covering this topic. Thank you.
Two closing remarks. One is trade-offs are really important in many of these cases that we are after.
It could be argued, as one of my professors and mentor at Lawrence Berkeley Lab during my graduate research days said, humankind messed around with the environment with the invention of fire, with the discovery of fire. Since then, we've been meddling with the environment. You could argue that. So it's really the trade-off. The last point I'll make is really three different prongs, and I will talk about this so much. There's the technology angle and the technology prong. There's the societal prong and then the resources prong. In Texas, where I live, putting solar grids, putting solar roofs in your home, you were getting credits for pushing power into the grid. And I'm now hearing that there was a credit and that policy is going to go. So even though there was a societal cause and there was a technology available, the policy has to align with the right adoption and incentives. Thank you.
So I believe sincerely that what you mentioned about the quality of the data and incentivizing this collection is a key for the success. But I would like to bounce on what another speaker said earlier. I mentioned a movie called Ready Player One. Is actually one of the key of that movie is that it starts with a race, and in order to complete this race, everybody has to go through the track. And what happens is actually that everybody's following the same path, and the key is actually that you have to stop and actually reverse and look behind in order to find a successful path on the track. And this is what we need to be able to do. We need to find a way, like what we've been doing before, and being collaborating, experiencing, sharing, and going in several directions that will be right for different set of people.
Where do you want them? I'm just making it clear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
So I think one thing to take away is we're talking about the data properties, but we shouldn't let the data getting lost in the data, like you said, the outcome. And making sure the outcome works for all the different parties involved. We all need to be able to own our data. We all need to be able to get to the outcome. Keeping that balance is important in a way that balances for all the stakeholders, not just the folks who have traditionally regional power. And I think that that's one of the things we think about when it comes to data cooperatives, that we keep an eye on the outcome that we want to achieve, but not at the cost of the pricing process, and making sure that's a two-way street.
Maybe just to add on, policy very often made with no data. they're made based on emotions and personal national incentives. So how do you, as a way where you make them that they can't be ignored, and that they are a genuine mechanism for increasing accountability and justice and voice in policy making, and whilst bearing in mind that you've got a hard wall to push against, this data often doesn't inform us.
Yanis would like to offer a closing remark. Yanis, can you hear us? Yanis? We cannot hear you.
Can you repeat, please?
Can you offer us a closing remark?
A closing remark. Of all the challenges that the world is facing now, except for war, which really dwarfs everything else, biodiversity is the biggest challenge. It's not COVID, it's not a pandemic, it's not economic, it's biodiversity. If biodiversity collapses, then nothing else will matter as far as we won't survive. And we should put emphasis, tremendous emphasis on this. I think biodiversity is even more important than climate action. Well, of course, because it's decline. And data, correct data, and computing technologies should be employed as important instruments for that. And this also sends some responsibility on us computing professionals, computing researchers, computing scientists, to focus on addressing these challenges. And the particular topic of this workshop is critical as biodiversity goes as well. Was I heard?
Yes,
thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Es importante para nosotros hacer entenderlos bien. Estamos pensando en el territorio. Creo que la idea muchas veces hacia los pueblos indígenas de manera romántica, de manera como los pueblos indígenas tenemos que vivir bajo la opinión de la gente del occidente. Creo que hemos superado para solucionar realmente los problemas que nos enfrentamos. Tenemos que dar acciones concretas, con políticas para accionar con los pueblos indígenas, y eso lo tenemos una experiencia concreta que venimos terminando el día antes de ayer con la Universidad de Nueva York, y quiero contar esta experiencia real.
So it's important for us to be heard and understood, or make people understand how we see things from the territory. I think we have overcome the notion of indigenous peoples living or being romanticized or being told how to live. But we want to have concrete proposals or solutions, and we had one of those experiences just last week in our community.
Hemos con la Universidad de Nueva York un proyecto que se llama Terra, y también con Fundación Fungi de Chile y pueblo originario de Sarayaku desarrollamos un encuentro científico, un encuentro de conocimiento ancestral y la ciencia, para desarrollar una serie de intercambio de sabiduría y de conocimientos sobre el arte, sobre la cerámica, las historias, sobre los cantos y más que todo sobre la biodiversidad, y de manera específica sobre el estudio de hongos, el micelio, a través de sonidos bajo subsuelo. Un estudio que han participado jóvenes monitores de Sarayaco, líderes que conocen sobre la biodiversidad. Y aquí hemos llegado a un punto concreto, a un acuerdo común sobre los derechos de conocimiento ancestral, sobre los derechos de la propiedad intelectual, sobre la ecología de los hongos y los sonidos, y también las moléculas. Es un nuevo acuerdo que hemos establecido para poder tener también el derecho como pueblo de Sarayaco, tener la propiedad, todo el descubrimiento, el estudio que se ha llevado en el laboratorio en Quito y partes de las moléculas que van a llegar a Estados Unidos. Entonces, son acuerdos que van avanzando y que dan derecho a la propiedad bajo la ley de consentimiento previo, libre e informado que tenemos como pueblo de Sarayaco.
So we organized a community of science and traditional knowledge to exchange knowledges between other science and our own indigenous knowledge or science, which includes biodiversity, but also culture and songs. And we organized this event with Fungi, an organization, Tehran, and New York University. And this summit it involved 42 scientists from around the world came to Sarajevo and worked with the youth in Sarajevo, the territory, to study the fungi underground by collecting the sounds. And through this project, the youth of Sarajevo were able to participate directly in the investigations, but also we reached a common agreement based on free, prior, and informed consent, which recognizes our intellectual property and rights to the data and ownership of the data, so that the data we send to laboratories in Quito, in the capital, would be our property. And the United States.
Termino diciendo, estaba invitando acá panelista de que se pueden presentar propuestas para una propuesta que se llama El Camino de la Vida. Sin embargo, siempre imponen condiciones a proyectos solamente para la reforestación. Hablaban del carbono, pero no se toman en cuenta los bosques en pie. Nosotros tenemos bosque al 99% de bosque conservado primaria, restina, el bosque en pie. Es una Amazonía que está conservada, pero ese tipo de proyectos cuando nosotros proponemos para conservar y implementar planes de vida, no quieren escuchar. Pero dicen, sí queremos reforestar eso. Pero ¿qué vamos a reforestar si tenemos el bosque en pie? O sea, tendríamos que tumbar todo para reforestar, entonces eso que son políticas contradictorias con las realidades, las propuestas que los pueblos originarios, los pueblos indígenas proponemos desde el territorio. Yo creo que debe cambiar esa política y apoyar realmente a políticas de conservación, gestión sostenible del territorio que nosotros venimos trabajando desde nuestra experiencia. Muchas gracias.
So it has been mentioned several times that people can develop carbon projects or apply for reforestation projects, but those typically come with imposed requirements or conditions, and often focus only on reforestation. But in our territory, 99% of the territory is primary forest, so there is nothing to reforest. And when we as municipals try to apply for projects or funds, we are typically rejected because we don't have anything to reforest, so we would have to cut down on the forest to be able to have any type of funding. Or so he thinks this needs to change. Yes, and thank you.
Fantastic closing. With this, we are on the difficulties and the instruments. Thank you for
Alan before we leave, because it's time to
Bueno, información, a ver. ¡Viva la unidad y la colaboración! ¡Esa es! Muy bien.
Start.